Alrighty, hello YouTube, Handheld Guru 97, back here again today with another collection video. As you can obviously see in front of you, this is my Nintendo 3DS collection. All 29-ish or so games, almost about 30, really don't know, haven't counted, probably because it would scare me too much, but anyway, as you can see, all my games splayed out here. This video is not going to be a quick one, of course. I'm going to go through, give a little detailed information about each game, give a mini review of such. Some of these games actually have full reviews on my channels. You might recognize those that do. Maybe they brought you to my channel in the first place. But what you might notice most is something I have yet to review. I bought a Nintendo 3DS XL about several months ago, back in February actually, but haven't gotten around to making a review of that yet, but I'll do that. I'll get a review for the XL up. I'll get a comparison between the XL and the Classic, which is still in its box over there. And yeah, so let's get down to this. This could take a while. Too many games to go through. It'll start off in chronological order with my first two games that I got with the system way back in March of 2011, all the way down to my most recent title, Harvest Moon, right there. So, let's get down to it. So, my first two games, along with the original system itself, back on March 27th, 2011, I decided to pick up the games Pilotwings Resort and Super Street Fighter 3D Edition. Of these two launch titles, Pilotwings is my favorite, quite honestly. Really enjoyed playing that game in the early days. Showed off the 3D capabilities of the system very nicely. Very fun little game. I have a full-blown review for this game up. One of my favorites. You can check that out on my channel. Street Fighter is a good game. It's a pretty solid fighting game. Has a decent online mode. But there's one other fighting game on the system. If you were paying attention while I was doing that nice little pan out of the games, you might have seen it. Maybe you didn't, but we'll see it here in a minute. But overall, it's a solid fighting game, but if you've played it elsewhere, it might not be worth it on here. It only adds 3D, and that's about it. Up next is the criminally overlooked Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Shadow Wars, which may look to the untrained eye like a bland first-person shooter, but it isn't. It is, in fact, a tactical RPG, very similar to the Fire Emblem series. A very, very fun game. I really enjoyed it. In the early days of the 3DS, of course, there was not very many RPGs to come by, so to have one like this available launch day, I picked this one up actually a few weeks after launch. Very fun game to play through. Ridge Racer 3D is a pretty solid racing game, however, it is missing online multiplayer, and the single-player mode is so beefy, and it basically goes on forever, really. But it's a solid racing game if you're not into the cartoony aspect of Mario Kart or Sonic All-Star Racing. It's a pretty good supplement, but if you need the online multiplayer component, then stay far away from that one, because it has no online multiplayer whatsoever. The game that shouldn't need any introduction, but I'll give it one anyway, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D, is the port of the classic N64 game, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Very fun Zelda game. Very, very fun. If you haven't bought this game yet, and you're a Zelda fan, and you own a 3DS, quite personally, I don't know what you've been doing for the last 2 years, but if you're waiting for A Link to the Past 2, or whatever it's going to be called at the end of the day, phenomenal game. But if you're looking for some more Nintendo 64 action in your pocket, but you're not a fan of Zelda, well, you have one other option. Star Fox 64 3DE. Another very solid Nintendo 64 port of the classic Star Fox game for the 64. Very fun, very playable. This is another one of those early 3DS games that would have benefited from online multiplayer quite a bit. But the local multiplayer is very fun on its own. Would be nice for online, but it doesn't have it. Still, very solid game. I really enjoyed it. Excluding the 3D Pokédex that launched with the eShop back in 2011, Pokemon Rumble Blast was the first standalone spin-off game on the 3DS, sequel to the WiiWare game Pokemon Rumble. It plays pretty well. It's a fairly fun game. Quite fun to play through back in the day when there wasn't much else to play on the system. But there is another Pokemon spin-off on the system. You probably saw that while I was panning around. At least I think you did. But it's a solid Pokemon spin-off. Plays fairly nice. Not the best game for the system, but I liked it. I had fun with the WiiWare version. I had fun with that version. Tetris Axis for the 3DS is Tetris. It's no Tetris DS, which left some people disappointed, but I personally had fun with it. It has online multiplayer, several modes to play through, from classic marathon to strange new ones like Tower Climber or something like that. I can't remember what it's called. But overall, very fun Tetris game. Online multiplayer is also in this game. Ironically, it's a game that doesn't need it, but it just adds to the replayability of this game. Very fun Tetris game. And it's $10 on the eShop as I'm filming this video. And that appears to be the permanent price. So if you're watching this in, let's say, the year 2015 or 2016 or wherever, and the eShop is still up, and this game is still on there for $10, you have to buy it. Just have to buy it. So I didn't even spend money on it, but I would have gladly spent all $40. Over here now, we have Super Mario 3D Land. Quite honestly, this is probably my favorite Mario game on the 3DS right now. There are several, including the various spin-offs and such on the system, but if you're excluding Luigi's Mansion at least, this is my favorite. If I were to only recommend 3 3DS games for you to get your entire life, you can only buy 3. Super Mario 3D Land, Kid Icarus Uprising, and Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon are the ones I'd recommend. Very fun game. There are 16 worlds in this Mario game. I did a comparison with this and New Super Mario Bros. 2. I'll remind you of that when I go over to New Super Mario Bros. 2. This one was my favorite, but again, it comes down to personal preference. Very fun 3D Mario game. Now here's a title you don't see very often, but you might see it digitally pretty frequently. Cave Story 3D received a retail release back in 2011 and got an eShop release last year, 2012. The game then, of course, disappeared off retail shelves and never was to be seen again, as people just bought it on the eShop. I, for one, did not know of the eShop version when I got this version, and I was like, well, who cares? When it came out, at least I have something rare now for my 3DS. Very solid Cave Story update. Really, it's now pretty expensive on eBay. I just recommend getting the eShop version because it's cheap as dirt. It's only like $10, really. But if you do have this title, phenomenal game to play. If you've never played Cave Story 3D, Cave Story in general, just get it in one form or the other. Quite personally, I'd recommend some of the older versions, the eShop version, DSiWare version, WiiWare version, Steam version, etc. But that's a pretty solid version if you've played it before. Mario Kart 7. Quite honestly, I like Mario Kart. But Mario Kart 7 kind of let me down for one reason and one reason only. There is no single-player versus. I don't know what Nintendo was thinking. I mean, sure, online multiplayer is nice and everything, but no single-player versus. Unbelievable. For that, not my favorite Mario Kart game. DS is better than this, but if you need online multiplayer for your Mario Kart, pretty good option right there. Bit Trip Saga. The original 6 Bit Trip games are included on one cartridge. Very solid compilation pack. I have a review for this up on my channel. Probably have to check that out, hopefully. Very solid game. There are some issues. The 3D is fairly weak in most games, like all of them except for like one. That's Void, which has actually really decent, even though it's minimal, but solid little compilation pack if you're looking for something that will last you a bit of time. You can sink your teeth into Runner and then come back, play for high scores on the other games. Very fun game. Nano Assault was released on the 3DS back in 2011 and has since spawned off a sequel on the eShop for both the Wii U and 3DS. This is a pretty good twin-stick shooter. even though, of course, the 3DS only has one stick. Plays very well. The game looks phenomenal. One of the best looking games on the system, and I usually don't talk about graphics. They don't matter to me that much, but looks great. Plays very solid. Not the longest game you'll play through, but it's fun while it lasts. Might be a bit hard to come by this retail release now. The eShop version on either the Wii U or the 3DS is the way to go, really. But overall, fun game. Kid Icarus Uprising. Again, like I was saying over at Super Mario 3D Land. One of the best games for the system. Love this game. Nintendo brought Kid Icarus back with style, class, everything. Online multiplayer. Great story. Phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal game. Just plays great. Don't listen to the critics saying blah, 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 blah. Controls. The controls, they are a bit annoying. They are annoying for some people, but it plays great. Fun game, just highly, highly, highly recommend it. One of my favorite games for the system. Crush 3D is a port of a PSP game that was released about 6 years ago, about 2007. It's a pretty solid puzzle game. Has about 40 puzzles in it. Some of them are ridiculous, especially towards the end there. But it was a fun game. Not my favorite game for the system. It was decent. And then Mario Tennis Open. There aren't many tennis games on the system. I'm not a huge sports fan or anything, but this is a pretty solid tennis game. Very playable. Online multiplayer, which was sold as a huge feature for the game back when it launched a year ago. Did an unboxing for it back then, actually. You can check that out if you want to. Maybe I'll do a review for it one day, but it plays fine. The online multiplayer, like I was saying, it's kind of devoid of people nowadays. Sad, but true. But it plays great if you're looking for a tennis game for the 3DS. Kind of your only option. Now, this was the fighting game that I was talking about way back up at Street Fighter, if you remember that far back. Dead or Alive Dimensions. Phenomenal fighting game. Very fun. No, I did not buy it for that. I bought it because I wanted a good fighting game. Quite personally, I rank this above Street Fighter. Watch as that gets tagged as the thumbnail. God almighty, I guarantee you that will happen, but with my luck. Finger pointing there, and I won't be able to change it because there's nothing else to change it to. But very fun fighting game. Plays great. Looks great. Very fun. Online multiplayer modes, even for Dead or Alive on the system, they're still pretty active. Very fun game. A hard game to recommend to people outside of Final Fantasy fans, but quite personally, while I'm not the biggest Final Fantasy fan ever, still my favorite game on the system. Theatrhythm Final Fantasy. Takes the 25-year history of Final Fantasy, takes some of the music from that, mixes it up, squeezes it into a cartridge, bada bing, bada boom, you've got Theatrhythm Final Fantasy. Now, if you'll excuse me, Square Enix, I'm kind of waiting for a Dragon Quest Final Fantasy, Theatrhythm Dragon Quest or Theatrhythm Chrono Trigger. Very, very nice if you could do that. Ace Combat Assault Horizons Legacy, which is the port of one of the earlier titles, like Ace Combat 2, I believe. Can't really remember which one it was a port of. But anyway, very fun game, very similar to Star Fox over there. So if you have Star Fox and haven't heard of this title, very good game. Again, like Star Fox, there's no online multiplayer in this game. For these types of games, it would be nice, but even without it, plays pretty well. Very fun game. I really enjoyed it. If you're looking for something more of an RPG, there isn't many on the system out now, but as the system's finally getting its footing established 2 years on, such games are now becoming more and more prevalent. But if you want something from Square Enix, and you're not too hopeful Dragon Quest VII will ever come to our shores, please come. Square, you're so slow. You have Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance. Pretty good Kingdom Hearts game, very fun. I enjoyed it. It is a nice, beefy title to sink into on the system, so if you're looking for something with a bit more action, a bit more meat on the bones, one of the meatier titles on the system. But if you want a game that will still steal your life even more than Kingdom Hearts can, but a little simpler, New Super Mario Bros. 2. Like I was saying over at 3D Land, I have a comparison video, and really it's just your preference. Do you like 2D Mario, do you like 3D Mario? I personally prefer the 3D Mario stuff, even though Super Mario World is my favorite Mario game ever. Very solid 2D Mario game. Very fun to play through. I enjoyed it. It is easy. It's even easier than Super Mario 3D Land. 3D Land I thought was really easy when I first played it. Though this was like ridiculous easy, but it's a solid game. Very fun. I liked it. Not everybody does, but I thought it was good. It's just classic 2D Mario, you know. Professor Layton and the Miracle Mask was a launch title for the 3DS back in Japan over 2 years ago. Finally made it to America last year. It's a solid Layton game, but I've played about 3 Layton games. Diabolical Box, Last Spectre, and this one. This one's not my favorite title of them all. In fact, I think it's my least favorite, unfortunately, but it's still a Professor Layton game, and they're all so good that really you can say, well, this is my least favorite, but the other, like, 3 of them I'd give a 10. This one I'd give a 9, this one I'd give an 8, and this one's like an 8.5, and then 8 point, and then like an 8. That's kind of how I'm going here. So, it's not a bad Layton game, it's just not my favorite. There are better ones out there, but if you're looking for a 3D Layton game, as the 4th one, I mean the last one, the 6th one, God, what am I thinking, 4th one, is on its way to America next year, and Professor Layton versus, Ace Anthony has not been announced for over here then, well, kind of the only option really, but Adventure Time, Hey Ice King, why'd you steal our garbage, is the first licensed game off the Adventure Time license, and those of you who don't know what Adventure Time is, it is a show on Cartoon Network set in the post-apocalyptic land of Ooo, with Finn, the last human, and his dog Jake, as they do various deeds for the various princesses of the land of Ooo, and they try and stop the sociopathic Ice King from ruining everyone's life. So, in this game, he steals their trash and makes a princess out of trash, because he's obsessed with princesses, the Ice King is. And you go around the land of Ooo beating up baddies and attempt to rescue your garbage. It sounds ridiculous, but if you watch the TV show, like I do, I'm proud to say that, then quite honestly, that actually doesn't sound that abnormal. The game was made by WayForward, which is awesome, and was written by Pentillion Ward, the guy who writes the show, basically made it, which makes it even more amazing. And the game is in the style of The Legend of Zelda 2, so it just keeps getting better and better and better and better and better. But if you're not a fan of the show, I can't recommend it. But if you're a fan of Adventure Time, if you've even watched like 10 or 15 episodes, it doesn't really matter, just run out and buy this game for either the 3DS or the DS, doesn't matter. It's on both systems, very fun game to get. So now we get over to my 3DS XL. And why is Fire Emblem Awakening on top of that? Well, this is my launch title for my 3DS XL. So the day my 3DS XL shows up in the mail, it's about 3 days after Fire Emblem Awakenings come out. I've been checking my Walmart for days, hoping that they might actually get a shipment of Awakening in retail form, because I don't want to download it. Well, I was like, well, let's see what happens. I walk over, they have it in retail form, they'd just gotten it, they had a ton of copies, and I bought it, retail form, and spent the rest of my night playing on my fancy new large-screened handheld. So we'll talk about the 3DS XL later, but right now, Fire Emblem Awakening. Again, there are very few RPGs on the system right now, it's just starting to pick up steam as we've passed the 2-year mark. Phenomenal game, just plays unbelievably great, 3D is great, story's great, characters are great. It's just a phenomenal tactical RPG. If you're a fan of tactical RPGs, you haven't gotten to the Fire Emblem series, great chance to do so. Has a casual mode, makes it a bit easier to get into. If you're a fan of Fire Emblem, have to get this game. Very, very fun. There's DLC coming in through Nintendo. It's just great. It's a well-rounded package. One of the must-haves for the 3DS. And the third game that I recommend, if you could only buy 3 3DS games your whole life, Super Mario 3D Land, Kid Icarus Uprising, and Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. This is the sequel to the cult classic from 2001, Luigi's Mansion. Fantastic game. Just unbelievable. It's oozing with creativity, with style, with everything. It's just... It might be the best game on the system, really. It really might be. Luigi is usually just, cast aside. Look at him. Look at him. Poor Luigi. He's up there. Look, he didn't even get on 3D Land's box art. Look, he's holding Mario's coins. And is he even on Opens? No, he's not even on Opens box. I think he'll be on, Golf's thing because they advertise that with the Year of Luigi, but I don't know. He stands on his own, and Luigi just does it flawlessly. He is perfect. We need to see more games like this. It shouldn't take a decade for Luigi to be able to stand on his own. Perfect game for the 3DS. It's just great. Online multiplayer, very, very solid. I can't recommend this game enough. If you could only buy one 3DS game, this is the one I'd recommend. Just must-own. A must-own for the system. Plays fantastic, just great. So we have to go way back, search your memories. When I was talking about Rumble, I said there was a better spin-off, at least in my mind. And that was Pokemon Mystery Dungeon here, Gates to Infinity. Very, very fun Pokemon Mystery Dungeon game. I love the Mystery Dungeon series. I know there's a lot of people who don't like it. Well, guess what? I like it. It's fun. First Pokemon game with DLC. They're downloadable on Dungeons. Works perfectly for this type of game. Very solid Mystery Dungeon game. Looks pretty good. It's one of the best looking Pokemon games ever. Hopefully Nintendo can translate it over to X and Y. Plays fantastic. It's fun. I like it. Not everybody's going to like it, but I like it. And last but not least is Harvest Moon 3D, A New Beginning. This is the second Harvest Moon game on the 3DS, and the first one not to be ported from the DS. Plays solid, very fun, classic Harvest Moon, but this time it has more customization features. You can customize your character. You can customize the whole town, basically. You basically have to revitalize the town to its former glory. It's empty when you get there, so the game can start off at a really slow pace, even though I've put almost 10 hours into it already. It's crazy addictive, but it's a very fun game. If you, like me, couldn't wait for Animal Crossing 3D, which is going to be my next game, in like a month, it's going to be right where my hand is right now, because I'm going to get it retail. If you can't wait for Animal Crossing or hate Animal Crossing, which, by the way, then you are a sinner and lame, then this is a great game to get. I mean, of course, by the time some of you are watching this video, Animal Crossing will have been out for a week, a month, a year, a century, a decade, who knows. But if you're watching this during the original release of the video, such as May 10th, such as I am, then it's a great game. It's just very fun. I can't really say if it's going to become one of my favorite games to the system yet, as I've only had it for like a week, but still a very solid game. So, stand up. Ooh, there goes my knee. Pop. There was my 3DS collection. Assuming my camera says So there was my collection, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you will definitely check out some of these games that I showed off here. Camera. Okay, let me get my camera to focus real quick. Oh, well, I can just talk. Then maybe it'll focus. So yeah, I mean, if you see any games out there that you like in this little pile of games, hope you definitely will check it out. I will, like I said, have a Nintendo 3DS XL and 3DS Classic comparison coming up here soon. I'll have an XL review very soon. I'll probably review Luigi's Mansion and Nano Assault soon. Of course, by soon it can mean anywhere from 5 to 7 months, but 5 5 days to 7 months, who knows, but here are all the games. I hope that if you have some of these games, your opinions are similar to mine. If you have a game that you don't see in this pile, but you love it to death, please send me a recommendation. I need more. Well, actually, I don't need more games, but I could use a couple recommendations. A few things I wouldn't mind checking out here and there. But yeah, there's the 3DS really has quickly become one of my favorite handhelds I've ever owned. There's so many really quality titles that have come out in such a short amount of time. And I really can't tell you too many duds. I've done my research on all of these games. Really, the only one I wouldn't strongly recommend is Crush 3D, Ridge Racer, Super Street Fighter. Adventure Time and Theatrhythm are dependent on whether or not you actually like the series that it's based on. But yeah, I mean, solid library of games so far for the 3DS. I will eventually have an updated video of this where these games will be flowing off my couch and down to my floor one day, probably towards the end of the system's life. But for the first 2 years, I must say, Nintendo, good job. You've started off slow over there. I mean, you started really slow. I mean, look, way over here. Started off a bit slow, but as it grew, just look where it's at now. Not only did the library grow in size, but this console grew in size as well. So yeah, thank you for watching YouTube. If you have any recommendations, feel free to drop them in the comment box below. If you like more of these videos, please feel free to subscribe and keep checking back. I'll hopefully have something up sooner than I had this one up after my last video, but yeah, thanks for watching. See you guys later.